Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I got a cryptocurrency all-star on the line with me today. Someone I've just greatly appreciated having on the show in the past, and we're going to get an update with Vays himself. Tone runs the very popular YouTube channel where he covers the markets and Bitcoin, precious metals, equities. He's an international speaker. His website is libertylifetrail.com. Tone, thanks for coming on Crush with me today.
No, thanks for having me back. I think it's my third time now.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate your time here with us, and especially the advice and the timely advice that you've given us. And here we are with the correction that we've seen in Bitcoin. And I got to start off with the latest strength we've seen, especially Thursday's action. I know you follow Bitcoin pretty closely, and I'd like to ask you, was it significant? What did this strength come from, or was it just more unknown? I mean, we had a move from below 7,000 to over 8,000. What's your analysis on this?
So my analysis on this particular Thursday's move has been very, very controversial in the space. To me, this was basically shorts just got nailed on a short squeeze. It was everyone was over leveraged to the short side. And I was still calling for lower prices, and I continue to call for lower prices. I see absolutely no fundamental basis for major Bitcoin demand. I think Bitcoin remains slightly overpriced, and not even that it remains overpriced. I would be very happy right now if Bitcoin was in the $6,000 area, assuming the current $6,000 price was a new all-time high. But that's not what happened. What happened was Bitcoin got a little bit out of control and all the way to $20,000, which was unreasonable. And whenever the prices get too unreasonable to the upside, they almost always overcorrect. And I felt that the correction that we already had was just not big enough. Now, I would say that the buying that came in February that bounced the price from a $6,000 bottom all the way to 12,000 had a lot more fundamental demand that could have been sustainable in taking us back to the upside, but it clearly wasn't. We then reversed from 12,000, came back down to about 8, 9, went back to like 11, 12,000, and then we had a huge fall back down to the $6,500 area. Now, my view on the markets is you don't get two perfect chances to buy the low. So once you get back to that $6,000 area that we saw in June, the probability that you got lucky again is incredibly small. And I think it was just like too many people were bearish, and now everyone seems to think that we're going back to 20K, and I am on the opposite side of that trade because I still think there's going to be lower lows. So I am going against the general view right now of crypto. I don't know how high we're going to get on this bounce, but I'm not turning bullish until I see 12, 13,000 or even higher. I remain very skeptical that the bottom is in.
Tone, then what do you suspect is going to happen for Bitcoin to go lower? Is it still too many people with gains that fundamentally need to sell and for a new bottom to come in? Is that what fundamentally has to happen?
No, I mean, basically, it's just, there's no such thing as like a major seller that turns the price, a major buyer that turns the price. I just don't see any street-driven demand these days. It's more businesses right now are stopping accepting Bitcoin than accepting it. There's just no demand, and people were like really disagreeing with me after the spam had stopped. When we finally got SegWit, when this recent spam that caused the Bitcoin mempool to go crazy, when when I was noticing that the number of transactions waiting to be processed was basically zero, we were processing transactions every single block, it showed me that there's very little usage of Bitcoin right now. So I still see a little demand and usage of Bitcoin, relatively speaking, around the world. I mean, I'm not even as eager to convince people to use Bitcoin right now. And one of the reasons is there isn't a single phone wallet on the market that I actually like. It's been one of my struggles lately. I still think the usability is significantly lower than I like it to be, and better tools are coming. And it's been frustrating for me getting people onto Bitcoin because I don't know what wallet to recommend them. Every single wallet I ever liked, I've ended up not liking. And it's look, I'm still a believer in Bitcoin. I haven't sold a single Bitcoin, but I can name you 100 reasons why Bitcoin is not worth the current valuation. And it's hard for me to justify it at the moment, but my long-term view on the Bitcoin price is still very, very good. And the problem that I'm running into now is it feels like I'm back in the gold bug movement, where they've been talking about gold being worth $20,000 every day for the last 30 years, and every day that it drops $5, they scream manipulation. And I was really bothered by that eventually, and I stopped believing in that. And it feels like a lot of the same people are now back in Bitcoin, where they think it should be worth $1 million right now when there's no infrastructure to support that.
You know, I feel like Bitcoin $8,000 is still a very respectable number from an optics perspective. And I was watching Jim Cramer this week as I was passing by a television at a restaurant, and he commented it on Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, and he was so dismissive about it. And I'm wondering, do you suspect the mainstream will give it the respect it deserves over time, or will it take new all-time highs, or just more adoption for this to happen?
Look, I think the adoption is going to be slow. Now, and here is the little dilemma that I run into. I think that Bitcoin is somewhat overpriced, even at the moment. And yeah, I disagree with people like Jim Cramer. I will argue with them all day about how useful Bitcoin is. But it also bothers me how everyone is trying to convince the world that Bitcoin is underpriced, and then when it drops, they now have to make up excuses as to what's going on. Like, I'd rather be a little more humble of the technology, and while I still hold on to my Bitcoin, financially, I'm very happy to be wrong, right? Like, I haven't sold my Bitcoin, I'm still holding on to it. So if I'm wrong and it goes to $100,000 by end of year, I'm sure people will continue to make fun of me and my views, and I will, take that to the bank because it definitely benefits me financially. But I'm trying to be a little more responsible and try to tell people that it's not this magical thing. You have to actually understand it. And if you're buying it right now, you have to be willing to hold on to it through potential significant downside. Because if someone convinces you to buy it right now, and then it drops another 20-30%, and you panic and sell, that person might not come back to the space for years and years and years. Like, you're not doing anybody any favors by selling them or convincing them of something that they then end up hating because you overhyped it. And I'm trying to be careful about that and more responsible. And for a lot of people that dismiss the technology altogether, they just don't understand it at all. And that's also borderline dangerous. Like, if you don't understand the technology, you shouldn't be dismissing it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of very disingenuous people out there calling Bitcoin a bubble and, laughing at everyone as it's going down, but completely missing it on the way up. Tone, so I guess I'd like you to speak to the volatility of Bitcoin. I know you follow it closely. Are we starting to see that volatility close in? And from that perspective, are people going to be able to trust Bitcoin more as a storage of value and not just this asymmetric speculative trade?
I think people will continue to trust Bitcoin as a store of value as long as every time it drops, it doesn't go below prior significant highs. I consider the last significant high to be $1,300, the 2013 high. As long as Bitcoin remains above 1,300 bucks, I believe that Bitcoin will maintain its overall status as a good store of value. Now, if we drop below that, which I do not expect, then we might lose the store of value property, which is actually very dangerous. Now, you will always have cryptocurrencies for the rest of time because they are amazing medium of exchange when they could be scaled. And Bitcoin is the closest one to scaling with Lightning. But having the ability to be a good medium of exchange and having the property of store of value they're kind of at odds with each other. And I don't think any currency in history has been able to achieve both a store of value and a good medium of exchange. I mean, gold grossly failed at the medium of exchange element throughout centuries, which is why fiat has always been a better medium of exchange, and it's more useful and it's easier, and security of fiat is significantly easier, but gold has been a much better store of value, while fiat is a bad store of value because governments can inflate it. Bitcoin has this chance to be both a medium of exchange and a store of value, but the road to be both of those things is not easy. It's very, very difficult. I mean, lots of people are going to get scared out of the store of value property, not only if the price drops from 20,000 all the way to like 2,000. In addition to that, God forbid another crypto actually, takes over Bitcoin. Everyone talked about the flippening with Ethereum, and then people were started to go crazy over Bcash. Like if another crypto was to take over Bitcoin for usefulness as a most popular cryptocurrency, I believe the store of value property is gone for all cryptocurrencies for generation or multiple generations to come. Why on earth would anyone trust a less secure crypto if Bitcoin couldn't get it together? So on the flip side, the medium of exchange could be challenged as well. Let's hope that Lightning is what I'm expecting it to be, and many other prominent people are expecting it to be. So there's lots of challenges still for Bitcoin, and ignoring all of these challenges and just talking about it like you can be rich just by holding it, I believe could become more dangerous for the whole ecosystem than being good for the whole ecosystem. Got to be realistic.
Yeah, I know you've always given very realistic and just straight up good advice, and I appreciate that. So I guess the general consensus now, especially watching Bitcoin come down and all the cryptocurrencies, is don't invest more than you're willing to lose. That's kind of like how everyone gets out of, hey, just be careful, right? But for Bitcoin, talking about Bitcoin as a wealth storage vehicle, I mean, are we getting there? And I know you touched on it, but I want to kind of, pull this out a little more. Is it getting there where eventually, the volatility will start to close in and it does become a store of value? And I was actually talking to Jimmy Song a few days ago, and he actually brought up the point that Bitcoin could have value just because it's a store of value, not necessarily because it's a good medium of exchange. And that might be enough of a reason for Bitcoin to have value. And just touching on that, if you would, the closing in of volatility, and does it become something like gold that is, a good store of value and not much volatility?
Yeah, it could, but for that to happen, Bitcoin needs to be significantly higher, at a significantly higher valuation. I mean, when one Bitcoin does become $100,000 or more, it becomes a much better store of value, because then the day-to-day volatility will barely affect any of your daily purchases, unless your daily purchases are in tens of thousands of dollars. But for the average person, it becomes a great store of value once there is enough value on the chain. And we will get there one day. As far as Jimmy mentioning that its store of value property is good. Its store of value property is amazing, because even for one interesting feature, Bitcoin is the first asset in human history that is just unconfiscatable when properly secured. And people have not comprehended the fact that by storing your value in Bitcoin properly and keeping your mouth shut, no one with a bigger gun can ever confiscate that from you. That is the most powerful feature there is, but it has to remain technologically stable, and you need to be able to still do that from a technological perspective. In addition, its value of censorship resistance in sending that value has both features: store of value property and the medium of exchange property. But just that feature of being unconfiscatable is, there's just nothing else out there. And people have not fully comprehended how powerful that is, because we haven't had a big, let's say, economic-induced event that affected an entire region, like a World War II, for example. Like, when something like that happens to a region, you realize how important it is to have something of value be unconfiscatable.
That's powerful. That actually leads me to my next question here, and it is: do you suspect Bitcoin will grow through conventional means like Coinbase? You know, Coinbase was this amazing platform that onboarded so many people, but through a very conventional way, where people gave up their privacy and going through the system. And I'm wondering if you think that that's going to be how Bitcoin continues to grow. Is it going to be some conventional means where, you know, the banking system's happy and governments are happy? Or is it going to be for those fundamental reasons that a lot of us got into it in the first place, and the underlying fundamental value reasons, like you were just talking about, that Bitcoin has, that'll take it to the new levels?
Well, both, actually, as weird as this sounds. I think for the immediate future, Bitcoin will grow through these, banker-assisted means like a Coinbase for the time being. But the catalyst that will take Bitcoin to its S-curve or mass adoption, that's going to be peer-to-peer. So basically, when enough people have acquired Bitcoin by these traditional bank-connected means, there could be a catalyst to just spread Bitcoin around the world. Now, whether that catalyst is a confrontation between the private sector and the public sector, or whether that catalyst is, the government acceptance of Bitcoin and allowing people to pay it peer-to-peer, or whether it's a movement of, let's say, some kind of a government breakdown in a first world country where people just say, you know what, we don't need your currency, we'll just use our own. I think the ultimate S-curve adoption will be the original peer-to-peer, but we can't get there until enough people actually have Bitcoin. And unfortunately, right now, the simplest and easiest way to get it is by connecting your bank account and identifying yourself as a Bitcoiner to the government.
Tone, you touched on this. I want to ask you one final question, or one final topic here, and that is gold. And I want to ask you, do you think it's possible for gold to go into this hyperbolic bull market similar to what Bitcoin had, or is it going to take some sort of massive economic event for gold to see this $10,000 price or $20,000 price?
I don't see a $10,000, $20,000 price for gold for a long, long time. Yes, it's possible for gold to go higher. It's very possible for gold to break the prior all-time high of 1900. And my ultimate top for gold will be in between $3,000 and $5,000 area, like any other asset. I mean, we all heard this before. There were books written that oil would be over $200 a barrel by the year 2012, and the whole world would just shut down because nobody can afford oil. And oil was like $25 like 2 years ago, right? These projections are always wrong. Same thing with gold. Gold becomes less and less useful every single year. So if gold does pump to the $3,000 area plus, I would say it's basically Wall Street probably feels that they can profit from more gold bugs rushing into this useless asset. I just don't see it. The world is becoming more digital, not less. And any scenario that talks about a catastrophe in the economic world that will drive the price of gold up, I learned that lesson in 2008. During the 2008 banking crisis, gold crashed 33% as the stock market crashed 50%. And I at first couldn't understand why. Gold should have gone up because of all this distress. And I eventually realized that when you have major financial calamities, people lose their jobs, and no one cares about spending their less dollar on gold. They care about spending their less dollar on food. And on top of that, thank God you had some gold during economic stress, you're going to go out and sell that gold so you can feed your family. So this idea that if there is some major economic distress in a society and it will raise the price of gold, I think is the complete opposite. It'll drop the price of gold because anyone that has gold is dying to sell it so they can do something with actual money.
Wow, I mean, that's some good insight right there, Tone. And obviously you're looking at what we just saw in 2008, and that's exactly what we saw then. So I'd be very curious to see what happens going forward here. I'm very positive, though. I'm optimistic that we will see a big move in gold in the near future. But having said that, Tone Vays, thanks for coming on Crush the Street. If people want to learn more about what you do, as always, where do they go and what will they find?
Sure. I have a pretty popular YouTube channel. We try to stream daily. So you can just go ahead and find me on YouTube as Tone Vays. I am also pretty active on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter as Tone Vays as well. My website is libertylifetrail.com, soon to be also tonevays.com. So you can find me there as well. I mostly travel the world, speak at conferences, and I teach a workshop educating people how to be more responsible and better traders using the tools of technical analysis.
Thank you, Tone, for coming on Crush the Street.
Thank you.